欢迎收听 Project Tenacity， 一个分享工作与创业资讯的 Podcast， 希望能在每一期的节目中带给在北美工作的华人就业和创业的资讯。四大会计师事务所 Deloitte、PwC、KPMG 和 EY 在学生以及社会新鲜人的心中，这么多年来始终屹立不摇。除了提供稳定以及高质量的审计服务之外，不断的招募人才和积极拓展其他专业服务，也是他们能够卫冕的原因之一。这期节目请到了在 Deloitte 德勤工作的 David 来聊聊他为期8年的 IT 稽核经验。也要提醒听众，这期的节目为全英文的访谈。听众们可以在 Spotify 和主要的 Podcast 频道以及 YouTube 上面找到我们，也记得到 Facebook、IG 和 LinkedIn 订阅我们，以便收到内容更新的通知。如果你有任何的问题，或者是想要了解的职业，也欢迎听众们私信我们，我们会找机会回答。All right, so well, David, thank you for coming today during the weekend, and I know you've been with Deloitte for a long time. So
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Too long? Is it too long?
You know what? As an organization, you get to do so much within Deloitte. So like 8 years, like I didn't really think about it being 8 years until pretty recently. Actually, I recently kind of like, oh yeah, it's actually been 8 years because like. I just kind of started thinking about my history, right? Yeah. So you get to do a lot within Deloitte. You get to see a lot of different problems and a lot of different clients. So like you don't really, I don't think there's too long. I think it's just you have to decide you as a person, whether you're a lifer, right? Someone who can stay around and not see what the other side is like, or if you're just kind of comfortable where you are. Yeah. And just be like, okay, I'm happy doing what I am right now. Yeah. Right? And it's just one of those things.
So which service line are you in at Deloitte?
Risk Advisory. So what Risk Advisory does is I think the name kind of says it for itself. We advise on risk. So
that's a very general statement.
I know. It's a very generic statement, but like that's kind of how they keep it, right? Like it's broken down to three different service lines. Yep. There's like there's operational risk, so that's where I think traditionally you would think it would be more related to like audit, right? IT audits, okay, right? So general IT controls and things like that. So risk around operations, and then there's we have our financial risk group, right? So they would be more of, I guess you would think of them. Let's see, you would think of them probably more leaning towards consulting side, right? So the operational risk is more of an audit side flavor. Yeah. Financial risk is more of a consulting style flavor. Yeah. And then you have your cyber risk, which is
right.
Which is kind of leaning heavy on more of an IT risk flavor.
So which group are you on?
So I'm in operational risk.
All right.
Right.
So more towards the audit side.
More towards the audit side, but like again, like it's that with and even with any of the large 4 firms, right? That is just how you're organized, right? To do you will find through my experience, you can do cross-functional projects, right?
Right.
So if you're available and you happen to have the skill set, you can do a cyber risk project. So I did do a cyber risk project a couple years ago, and I've done like our financial risk project a couple years ago as well. Like it just kind of mixes it, right? I've been on consulting projects, like with our consulting practice, right? So it just comes down to your skill set and kind of your expression of interest, right?
And availability, I guess.
Yeah, availability, right? Like you got to make yourself available to do the projects, right? Like you got to tell them like, I'm actually kind of interested in trying this out, and then you got to kind of look at your calendar and try to make yourself available. And there's a bit of luck to it, right? Because if something happens to start up when you're available, that's in your interest, then you get to go, right? Yeah. If it's not, then you have to be a bit more. You have to manage your time better, right? Yeah. So in the sense that, like, say you really want to do, I don't know, a cyber risk project that's going to start up in a month. Well, you got to think about, okay, what can I fill up and not overshoot it, so I can, when that month comes and that cyber risk project starts, I can empty out my calendar and kind of go do that.
So it's not like you kind of I mean, during a normal recruitment process, not like you kind of apply for this job and you're like set in this work forever.
Yeah, you
right?
just fluidity, right? Like you can transfer between departments and things like that, and it's, I mean, they'll obviously try to allocate you best based on your skill set.
Yeah.
Right. So like for example,
best interest of the firm, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a resource kind of management style, right? Like they think about like, okay, this person is more IT bent and has a good IT background, maybe cyber risk, right? They'll obviously take they'll take your thoughts into consideration, but like, you know, when you're a student and coming out of recruitment, if someone offers you a job, you're gonna take it.
You're gonna do whatever they tell you to do.
You're just gonna take it, right? So I think it's, but with these large firms, I think the benefit is the flexibility, right? As opposed to like.
We'll come back to flexibility in a bit. I just want to take this up to just one level higher, because all we've been talking is in the risk advisory service line, right? So aside from that, we all know that Deloitte does this traditional audit. Obviously, they do tax, right? Other than those three that I know of right now, like what else do they do? Consulting? Is that part of Deloitte?
Yeah, they do consulting. Actually, we don't know how much longer we do consulting, right? Do you hear about in the UK? They're separating they're trying to separate the consulting and traditional audit practice.
Really, within Deloitte?
Within all the big four in the UK.
Really?
Yeah. So I think KPMG said that they were going to do that. They've agreed and said that they're going to do that.
Yeah.
And I think Deloitte's just kind of waiting. But like you know, things change, right? Even a couple years back, remember when the whole Enron scandal happened? Yeah. At that time, a lot of the big fours they separated their consulting and insurance practices at that time. But yeah, like consulting, so they do tech consulting.
Yeah.
So tech consulting is like, you know, kind of like you know, we're trying to do an SAP implementation. We need people on the ground to help us do that. They do strategic consulting, right? So strategic consulting is kind of like, oh, I'm trying to. What's a good strategic consulting? Like I'm trying to rebranding maybe, kind of things like that. Yeah. And then we have like, you know, like we have Doblin and Monitor. So Doblin is more of I think they do more UX stuff, user experience stuff.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big brand outside of Canada.
Yeah.
Like I think in the UK it's a pretty big brand. Over here in Canada it's starting to slowly pick up. Monitor is they're strategic consulting.
Yeah.
Right. So consulting, even consulting, they have brands, right?
Right. So splits into a lot of different streams.
Like traditional consulting was just Deloitte Consulting, and then you have Monitor, Doblin. I'm sure there's a few other ones in there too, but yeah, like they do pretty much anything involving consulting. They've done.
Is there like, I don't know how, I guess within the 8 years, how many different projects have you been on, but like overall, do you like just want to kind of distinguish the difference between what you do? Because obviously you do operational risk, but there's also consulting and risk advisory, right? And there's a separate consulting group. So like what's the difference, do you know?
So there is no difference. I'll be real with that one. There is no difference. The difference is that with consulting, we're risk experts on operational risk. We're subject matter experts in risk, right? In consulting, they don't necessarily have that same kind of subject matter expertise.
So the objective is not to to hedge against a risk or kind of prepare against the risk that per se, or the approach is different. Can you say that?
I think their topics are different. So what they're trying to do are a bit different. Right?
The problems that
they're trying to face are a bit more like, I think with consulting. With the risk advisory, because there is that hand that touches assurance, it limits the kind of things that we can assist them with.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the whole independence issue, right? Whereas with consulting, they're pretty much at arm's length with they never touch anything to do with assurance, pretty much, like in terms of like auditing or any type of service audit reports or anything. They never touch any of that. So their ability to serve on different kind of like tasks for the client is different from ours.
I see.
I think consulting people have a different skill set than us, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, through my experience with people who do consulting, they're a bit more savvy on terms of like, you know, presentation skills and like their ability to lead workshops, storytelling. This is a bit better on that, right? But that's also because they actually spend their training on it, right?
Right.
So when they first come in, they actually get trained on that kind of stuff. So I think it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily a better or higher or lower skill set.
So coming back to the, I guess, operational side of risk advisory, can we break it down, like generally what are we looking at? What kind of work? Because at this point, at this level, as we described, it's still kind of vague. I mean, it's audit, but like, what kind of stuff do you audit?
We have internal audit.
Yeah.
Right. So we support, I guess, some of our clients' internal audit functions. Right. We have assurance, where we actually are a part of the audit team. Right, so that's your general IT controls and things like that.
But you still focus on the IT side rather than
still focus on the IT side.
Number crunching, financial audit.
Yeah, no, we don't do any of the. It's more controls based. It's more IT based. Then we have our. I guess we have internal audit, external audit, third party reporting. Right, that's where your like SOC stuff. That's where your like CSA 3416 kind of reporting.
What are those actually? Like, what are they like? What?
They're just there's names for different sections of the audit handbook. Like the 3416 is actually a section of the audit handbook, and it speaks specifically about the type of engagement, right? So like with assurance, there's different levels of assurance. Like there's you can go from like full blown audit all the way to like, I think section 9100 is just specified procedures.
Oh, I see.
Where they just, you and the client just agree on what you're going to do, and you literally do it to the word. It provides like zero. It doesn't provide any assurance actually.
All right. Can we kind of have, from your perspective, have an overall idea of how an engagement goes, from start to finish, end to end?
Sure. Like, do you want me to start from like the sales perspective too?
Sure. I mean, just on a high level, kind of.
Well, usually like the if the client has a problem, they'll reach out to one of their advisors, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we try to be. We try to be one of their advisors.
Yeah.
Someone that the client trusts well enough to come to us with when they come into problems involving risk. So they'll come to us with a problem involving risk.
What kind of problem do they come?
It could be anything, right? It could be like building.
Anything that you remember most?
Like for example, like their current design of a risk calculator is not up to par. They don't think it's good enough. And they want us to come in and take a look at their design of the risk calculator and help them provide recommendations, right? So that's an example of one. Or for example, they currently have an RPA practice, a robotics process automation practice, right? But they haven't thought about the controls of on how to control, how to put controls against robotic process automation. So we come in and give some advice on that, right? So they come in with a problem. They don't really necessarily, maybe they don't have the skill set or they don't have the resource availability for it. So they come to us for it, and we usually put together kind of like a high level plan, right? So that's our RFPs, right? We kind of tell them like, this is what we were planning to do. This is what we're going to do.
Right. And this is how much it's going to cost.
Right. Exactly. Right. You do all the sales stuff. Like, this is what we're going to do for you. This is how much it's going to cost. Right. And then you find the resources, right? So, we try to put the best person to the team, right? So if someone has a background on it, or if they have a good understanding of it, and this is kind of like that time, I said, people need to put their hands up and try to say, I have an interest in it. That's, by being connected with all the different engagements that are kind of going around, that's your opportunity to put your hand up. Like, I know this engagement's spinning up soon. I'm really interested in it. Can I help out? Put me on it. Exactly.
Right.
And then, you go into your field work, right? You go in there, and that's when you start collecting information, figuring out what the problems.
Is it always on site? Like, you have to go click on it?
No. It's not always on site. I think being on site, I think it should always be on site. Personal opinion, because you want to get that FaceTime, right? You want to get FaceTime with your client. You want to see your client, shake your client's hand. You don't want to do that.
Build a relationship at least. Yeah, exactly.
But there's some limitations sometimes. Like if the engagement, it's in another time zone, and the engagement isn't funded enough for you to fly over there, you know, you can do some portions of it on the phone, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So
you collect the information, and
you collect information. You hold like workshops or walkthroughs or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And just collect the information. You kind of get back. You know, once you finish collecting it, you start formulating your idea. You know, that's when you start looking at documents.
Yeah.
Start reading. Start looking at best practices. You know, speaking to your colleagues about, you know, if they've seen something similar to that. You know.
Yeah.
And formulate a response and kind of prepare it and present it to the client, right?
In a presentation, or?
So in your traditional consulting engagements, you would probably do in a presentation.
Yeah.
Right? With like audit, you'd probably be in the form of working papers, right? Where you would just kind of say, like, you know, you'd give them your findings, right? You probably still do it in a presentation.
Right.
And that's probably something I would recommend most of the like consultants to do, and people to do in general, just to kind of present your ideas, right? I think the ability to present your ideas is probably better done in a presentation than in just, you know, here's a piece of paper that says 3 things, right?
Right. So once that's done, that's pretty much wrap up the entire project, right?
You start wrapping. Well, obviously, it has to go through like cycles of review and stuff like that. Obviously.
Oh, I see.
You know, it has to be reviewed, right?
And then the client's got to pay, and that kind of closes it off.
Yeah. Well, the client pays throughout, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of close it off by kind of, you know, wrapping it up by just, you know, presenting your findings. It's just kind of like, once you present your findings and your recommendations, it's kind of the beginning of the end, and then it's just kind of packaging it up into an artifact if they need it, right? So for like traditional consulting agreements, they kind of leave behind an artifact, like, you know, whether it's a presentation or a document or something. For audit, you know, because it is audit, like all the artifacts get stored in the audit file. Right.
And then once that's done, you kind of repeat the entire process with a different client who has a different problem. Right. Different team or different whatever processes.
Okay. Different problems. You'll see different problems a lot, right? I mean, obviously not everyone in the world has, every company in the world has different problems. There will be some overlap or some similarities and things like that, but there'll always be small nuances that'll be different. Whether it's a different application, whether it's a different organization structure, something's going to be always a bit different.
Well, I'm going to ask the question. I don't know if you can answer or not. I guess throughout your 8 years, is there any engagement that you probably would not forget, even as you went on to different, maybe like different work or whatever, like this one engagement that you remembered most vividly because it was challenging, or maybe because it was funny, or anything like that?
Not really, because I mean, because in the 8 years you see so much. Like
you become numb.
It's not because you become numb. It's just that because you've done so many interesting things, right? Like if I was to kind of go through all the interesting things that I've done, I mean, I wouldn't have like everything was interesting, but like the highlights of it would always be you'd have more than at least 10 highlights, I think, in your career, right? Like 10 projects are like, oh, that was really interesting, or this was the first time I've done that, right? So if I was to pick, it'd be very difficult to pick one, right? But there are people who could probably go through it and just be like, oh, you know, I only do this one thing. There are people who can do that. Again, the beauty of working at a firm like this is because there are so many other consultants and senior consultants and managers that exist within your department and area. You can choose to just say, I want to do this and only do this, and leave the doing different things to someone else. Someone else can do that. Right. So you have that choice. Right. And that's kind of one of those benefits of working at a firm like this, is that there is enough resources around that you can you can dictate how you would like to work. Right? You can't necessarily choose all the time, but most of the time you can get to choose. You have a say. Because, you know, there is, if you don't do it, someone else can. Right?
Is there something that you dislike about your current position, or throughout the 8 years that kind of just is there and there's nothing you can do about it? You just, you know, it just comes with the job.
I would say like there's a lot of paperwork that we have to do. I'm not meaning paperwork, but sorry, not paperwork. Like and this is probably the nature of, because we are touching the assurance portion. There's a lot of independence emails that you have to fill out. There's a lot of what else you have to do? Like
sorry, before we go on, what's the independence email?
You have to confirm your independence, right? So say, for example, like they're doing an audit on, I don't know, bank XYZ.
Right.
They kind of send an independence email asking you, like, do you have stocks in XYZ?
I see. Right, because you get to see the numbers. You can't buy the stock of that company.
It's not that you can't, like, they just want to make sure you don't have any financial ties to a company,
right,
that would affect your independence,
right,
like that would impact your decision making, right?
Okay, so it's that kind of, can I call it admin?
Yeah, like
administrative.
There's a bit of administrative stuff
that I had to do.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the general monotony of it. There's also, something that I started realizing very recently is that, like, you see, like, in the firms, you see your colleagues leave all the time. You see your colleagues.
The turnover is that high?
The turnover. It's not like it. There's turnover. There's always turnover, right? It's, say in like a year of like 30 people, maybe a handful of them would continue to be there after 8 years, after 5 years, maybe only.
So like 30 people after 5 years, you're probably left with 5. Can I put it that way?
Yeah, probably, right? Like,
wow.
So you're always going to see people leave, right? So, and with that, you're going to see people kind of, quote unquote, move on with their life. Right, right.
That's a very interesting phrase,
right? Because they've moved on, right? They've gone to do something else, and like part of what you have to combat is that feeling of like, oh, I'm still here. Should I go?
Right. You kind of question yourself.
Right. You have to question yourself because you're still around.
Right.
Right.
Right. Am I being a unique case? Am I just not good enough to move on, or did I really like what I'm doing? That kind of question,
it's not am I good enough to move on, but should I move on, right? Because if everyone else is doing it, like, should I be like?
Is there something that I didn't see?
Exactly. Is there something out there that I'm not seeing, or
right,
like, so and that kind of happens when you're in a place where there's high turnover, right? Yeah. Your friends, your close friends, in that you've kind of spent your time with, they just end up leaving, right?
Yeah.
Going on to do other different things or other things, and you're sometimes left wondering, like, oh, like, maybe I should go too, or maybe I should. Am I not being ambitious enough by leaving, right?
Is there any common things? Because from what I've heard, like, people in audit, like, they work crazy hours every week.
Yeah.
Right. So is it because of the workload, or is it because the culture?
It's a mix of factors. I think it's a mix of, like, you don't go into this not knowing that you're going to work.
That is true.
Right? Like,
it's already out there. Everybody knows, right?
Anyone who goes into the firms and works in whatever and doesn't think they're going to work long hours did no research. They didn't do any research. Well, they just didn't do any research, right? But this is the same with almost any professional service. Consulting, any kind of consulting practice, you're gonna do it. You're gonna work long hours. Yeah. Right? But, like, you should be ready for it, right? Yeah. So I don't think long hours is a deterrent. I guarantee you there are people who are like, oh, I left because of long hours. I guarantee you there's some people who are like that. But that's not like the biggest contributing factor. A lot of people are just like, they just want to do something different, or they just they're at a different stage in their life, and they're like, okay, I think it's time for me to wind down. I can't do like the full like 60 hours a week or whatever, or like, oh, you know what, like, I was really interested in this, now I'm not. Yeah. Right. People lose interest. So there's a number of contributing factors to why people leave the firm. I think hours is definitely a part of it. Interest is definitely a part of it. And then, like, let's be realistic, money is probably a part of it as well.
Let's talk about that. Like, I thought, the Big Fours, at least what they say on the internet, is that they have competitive compensation, right?
Oh, it's competitive,
right?
But, like, competitive means it's in the middle of the pack, though.
Is it? Does it really mean that?
Well, like,
I thought you're higher than the average.
No, I don't think.
No.
If they were higher than, like, it's competitive, meaning, like, you can find companies out there who will pay you the same.
Yeah.
Right. But, like, if you do the same job somewhere else, there's possibility that you get paid more. There's also a possibility you get paid less. For every large Big Four firm, there are probably 30 to 40 smaller firms that probably don't have the same amount of resources to pay someone the same amount of money like that.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think it would probably, like, if we really think about the salaries, it's probably somewhere in the middle of the pack.
Do you think people treat the firm's experience as a stepping stone?
Yeah, I think so. But I think that's in the nature of how they come into the organization, right? So you talk about your average like accounting student.
Yeah.
They join the firm because they're trying to get their CPA.
Yeah.
Right from the get-go, it's a stepping stone. I'm doing this because I want to get my CPA. So it's right off the bat, it's a stepping stone.
Well, they can't get their CPA if they didn't work at.
They can get
auditing.
They get it at some other places as well. They can definitely get it at some other places as well.
Yeah.
Right. So like the CPA organization, they've definitely opened up these kind of, I think they're called CA training offices, CATOs.
Okay. Yeah.
So there are some organizations like Bell. I think you can do it. Rogers, you can probably get it too.
Yeah.
Like some large organizations, you can definitely get your CPA. But again, like the narrative, right? When you're throughout your university career, is like you go to the Big Four, and you get your CPA at one of the Big Fours. Right, so already from the narrative, from the get-go, you're already thinking of it as like a training ground, right? Like you kind of go there, suffer a bit, and then get your
suffer a bit.
Yeah, I mean, so you suffer a bit and you get your CPA, and then by that nature, kind of like you're already going into it with like the idea that it's a stepping stone, right? And like you talk to your colleagues, and they all kind of have the same mentality, and just kind of spreads out like that, right?
Are you a CPA?
Yeah, I'm a CPA. Yeah.
When did you get it? Like,
oh wow.
At what year of Deloitte?
Second or third year of Deloitte.
Okay, that's considered fast, right?
Yeah, not. I don't think it's considered fast.
No?
I think you on average you probably need about 2 years of experience.
Okay, so meaning that
2 years of work experience, and then
Okay.
you have to write the exams, right? You have to write the exams.
Right. How many exams are there?
In the past, so when I wrote it,
When
it was,
you did it, yeah.
when I wrote it, it was 3 exams back then. It's since changed. I don't know what's changed to. There is still that final exam. That's that difficult final exam. But I think the second exam, which used to be called the School of Accountancy, I think is now changed to something else. It's like a bunch of modules now. I think it's all module based.
Yeah.
So like the program has changed over the years.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to continue to touch on the CPA exam because currently you're probably the only CPA that I'm interviewing with. So I wanted to kind of get your opinion of, I mean, as far as you can remember, like what kind of material did you use and how did you study and how did you go through that process? Because I wouldn't imagine it to be joyful.
Yeah, it was complicated, but like it was difficult, right?
Right.
But like here's the beauty of the firm, right?
Yeah.
They understand why you're here. You're here to get your CPA.
Yeah.
So they help you with that.
Deloitte helps you.
Deloitte helps you with that. Huh. Yeah.
Okay.
They have Deloitte run classes. They run their own classes to teach you
CPA material.
CPA material.
Wow.
So they bring instructors in from externally to teach you this stuff, right?
Yeah.
They provide you with all the resources you need, like handbooks that's like being like truncated. So instead of reading like the whole
pages,
I don't know, accounting, I don't know what it's called now, but all the audit standards, they truncate it to like these sections, right? So they help you do that. Like they really prepare you for the exams, and they give you pretty much all the materials you need to prepare yourself for the exams. Right. So they definitely help you on that, and they definitely provide assistance on it because it's in their best interest as well, right?
Right, for their for their staff to obtain CPA and
of course
have authorities over whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
All right. So since we talked about hours, I wanted to just throughout your 8 years, what's the longest hours per week? Give me a number.
Probably when it first started, there was like a one or 2 weeks where there was like 2 days where I just stayed in the office. I was like really.
No, you didn't go home?
Didn't go. Well, I went home the next day, kind of thing. Like I stayed overnight really late, but that was like really early on, right? And that's also because like at that time, I thought that that's what I should be doing.
Jesus.
Right, like because you think like, oh, I have to just work really hard. Right? You think like, oh, it's not done yet. I should work really hard.
Yeah.
as you get more experienced in the firm, you understand that, like, yeah, you have to work really hard, but you have to have better control over your work, right? Just don't just take on work, right?
Right.
You just have to better manage it. And it's that whole concept of time management, right?
Yeah.
Time management isn't about doing all the tasks assigned to you in the allotted time. Yeah. It's about understanding what tasks you should be doing with the allotted time that you have.
Okay.
It's not like, here are 10 tasks, try to fit it into 40 hours. It's the other way around. Here's 40 hours, try to fit as many tasks as you can within that 40 hours. Right. It's different, right?
Yeah.
So when people think about it's a different way of thinking about time management.
So are we looking at, what's your worst week? Like, are we looking at 60 hours? Or
it's probably more than that. It'll be like
more than
70,
that?
80 hours probably.
70, 80 hours per week.
Well,
at worst time.
At worst time. At worst time. But like, again, like, you're prepared for it. You should be prepared. Anyone who goes into this not being prepared, it's like even if you join one of those, like, those investment firms, and like, I'm sure they have long hours too. Right. So you have to be prepared for it. You have to understand what you're trying to do, and you have to be aware of what you're getting into. I think that a lot of people aren't aware of what they're getting into, and they join the firms, and they're like, oh, this is actually really hard. I have to do a lot of work. This is not a thing, and it's fine if they don't like it.
Yeah.
But like, what is not fine is like, hey man, you didn't do the basic research to figure out this is what it's like, right? You don't research your job before you join an occupation. Yeah. This is what the occupation is like. You decided to join into this, right? Yeah.
But I think after all, like, even if you did a research, it's kind of hard when you're not living in it, right? You kind of know this is coming, but then when you're really living in it, you kind of realize this is how much I suffer. The degree of discomfort.
It's people never believe. You know the phrase, like, don't trust the hype, right? In some cases, sometimes you do have to trust the hype, right? That, like, you know, some people are like, oh yeah, like, I didn't think it was this many hours.
Yeah.
Like, well, but like, if you go out there and like kind of look it up, like, just look it up, like, do CPAs work long hours, or do accountants work long hours? You'll find, yes, they do.
Yeah.
Right. And some people just like choose to ignore it or just didn't look it up. Right.
Okay. Well, I guess at this point, I kind of want to touch on the applying for the job.
Oh yeah.
Your job.
Yeah.
Well, the job that you started with. Let's put it that way. It is hiring season right now, so I know a lot of career fairs are being held at schools and all that. So Deloitte is obviously one of all the big fours are part of the major career fairs. So I guess, what's the level that you start with? Sorry, what's the title that you start with?
So you start as consultant.
Consultant. Okay.
Yeah, you start. Well, sorry. When you're a co-op, there's analyst.
Okay, so analyst is for co-ops.
Yes, for co-ops.
Okay.
And then you have, when you start off, when you're full-time starting off, you're consultant.
Consultants. Okay, so that's the keyword to look for, right?
Yeah, I think that's the keyword. That's in terms of risk advisory, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
Right.
Which school did you go to?
I went to Ryerson University.
Okay.
For business econ.
Did you join because of the career fairs, or what's your application process like?
Funny story. So it wasn't a very good student. I just wasn't I didn't do research. You know how I say, like, you gotta do the research about the job? I didn't do my research properly.
Okay.
So I wasn't aware that right now would be like the hiring season. I literally thought, like, after I was graduated, that's when I started applying for jobs. That's literally what I thought. Like, after I graduated, I would start applying for jobs.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into it in the conventional. I didn't get recruited straight out of university that way. Right. So what ended up happening was, like, I graduated university. I realized at that time that, like, oh, like, I should have been applying a lot earlier. Right. So I ended up actually applying to a tax position out in our southwestern Ontario practice, out in Burlington.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
So I applied there, and I ended up getting an interview.
Yep.
Right. So I got, and during my conversation with the I think he was the senior manager and the manager in tax, I was talking a lot about my interest in tech.
Huh. Okay.
I was talking a lot about my tech interests.
Yeah.
And during that time, the senior manager were like, oh, you know what? Like, if you're really interested in tech, there's this practice called I think at that time it's called ERS, Enterprise Risk Services.
Okay. Yep.
That actually has a lot of that really it really meshes in with tech. Like there's an overlap. There's an overlap between like kind of like what I did, which is accounting and technology. So he said that there was a bit of an overlap, and they were like, okay, maybe you should interview with them.
Oh, they're kind enough to tell you that.
They
like, very kind.
And here's the thing: everyone in the firms are not looking out for. They're all nice people.
Yeah.
You know how you know a lot of people who leave the firms always say like the thing that I'm gonna miss is the people, because the people who work at the firms are truly are nice, right? Because there's no need for them to be for them to be kind of overly bureaucratic or not like there's no backstabby. It's not like that kind of corporate
being
world.
An asshole.
Yeah, well, no, it's just not like a dog eat dog kind of corporate world.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas like I would assume like kind of like in like the investment world, where your individual investment performance is probably drives a sense of competition.
Yeah.
There isn't that much of a sense of competition in there because it is teaming. It is you kind of work on one large engagement together.
Yeah.
So the tax guys, they actually end up setting up an interview with me with ERS.
Yeah.
And I interviewed with them, and they ended up assigning me to Enterprise Risk Services, but for their private practice, private services, like small companies.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing that for like at that time they were separate. So they had like the large company ERS and small company ERS.
Okay. Yep.
Right. And that's where I started off for a bit, and then eventually.
Before we go more into it, I just want to talk about like the interview process, because I know a lot of people are going to ask you that question, like, what did you do that kind of got you the job? I guess, have you ever talked to the person who interviewed you? Like, what in you stood out, or like what did you do that you, or maybe from your perspective, like what did you do that you felt it was very helpful during the interview and stuff like that?
Well, it's about aligning your skill set to their goals, right? So the fact that I was so interested in technology, I had the fact that I knew a lot about technology, and the fact that I did have my accounting, right? It aligned with what their goals were. It aligned with the type of things that they were trying to do, right? Because they're risk advisory, they're doing IT audits, right?
Yeah. So you gotta know accounting. Obviously, it's an audit firm, and you do audit. Right? You gotta know your accounting. You're doing IT audits, so you gotta know technology as well, and then you gotta be interested in both of those stuff in order to.
And you just need to know. You have to do, again. It always comes down to doing your research, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, like I think during that time, I expressed my interest in doing a CISA.
Okay.
Right, and I knew.
Wait, the CISA is.
Certified Information Systems Auditor, I believe is what.
Okay, so it's like a certificate for IT audit.
It's a certificate for IT audit specific.
Okay, all right.
Right?
Yep.
And I had mentioned it knowing that most of their practitioners had CISAs.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's a great thing to mention, because
the fact that I knew about what I was gonna do in the job anyways showed interest, and again, it's about aligning myself to their goals.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about just saying whatever they want to hear, right? But it's about actually knowing enough to have an informed an informed discussion about what they do, right? And having an informed discussion about how what you do right now, whether it's you're a student or whatever, aligns with what they want, right?
I mean, I particularly like the way you kind of interpret research, because I mean, just looking at this CISA, this phrase alone, like being mentioned, like it's your way of displaying that you understand what they do, right? What they do, what they're practitioners, what you're expected to do as a consultant, at that time. So I think it is particularly useful for anyone who's listening to do your research. But I want to come back to the research part. Like, how did you do your research? Is it just Google, or what kind of material did you use?
Yeah, I literally just Googled
Okay.
ERS. And I'm serious. I Googled ERS.
Yeah.
And I read it up on Deloitte. I read it on the Deloitte website, actually.
Right.
And I had simply just read it, and you can find like resources pretty much anywhere. There's like forums and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, what does ERS do?
Or like Glassdoor. That kind of
Glassdoor,
stuff?
yeah. I looked up all that stuff, read it, and then you would see like key terms like, you'd look up someone in ERS and you look at their, all the little things they have at the end of their names.
Yeah.
Like the CPA, PMP.
Oh.
Look it up and like, okay, I don't know what that is.
Right.
So just read that.
Yeah.
Right. Get a better understanding of what they do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like, I'm not saying you should spend like years of research on it, but like have enough to have an informed discussion. Right.
Yeah.
It's about just knowing enough to prove that you have a good grasp of what you're getting into, a good enough grasp of what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about being smarter than them. It's about just having the bare level of understanding.
Right. I guess from your perspective, obviously, I don't know if you have ever been in a role of a hiring manager or someone who or you interview someone.
I've been
during the 8 years.
People.
So my question is, as an interviewer, obviously, like you said, like you have to show interest, you have to do your research. But is there any other thing? Is GPA important?
I think GPA is important from I hate to call it a filtering. There's a filtering process, right? Think about all the applications that come in, right? Say you have 1,000 applications. You can't look at all 1,000 applications. So you have to think of these criteria that you think would best suit your needs, right? So they think about, okay, well, they'll filter it based on GPA. They might filter it based on school. Right? But they have to. The GPA is just one of the various filters that get applied before someone finally reads it.
Okay, so there is a filtering process.
I think so. Okay, I think so. Like, obviously, like I'm not in HR.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, you're not the first line of.
Yeah, I'm not the first line.
Yeah.
So by the time it gets to me, it's already gone through like a few levels of like someone's like looked through it and kind of gone like filtered out people already, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't. I couldn't imagine it not being a filtering criteria, right? Like you're trying to hire the best person, and they're just out of school. Yeah. What can they put on a piece of paper to prove that they're smart aside from their degree and their GPA, right? Like there's not much else in there, right?
Right. Okay. So I guess during the interview process, other than the stuff that or the characteristic we already mentioned, like research and keen and all that stuff, is there any other thing that you came across that kind of surprised you during your, I guess, recent interviews? Or
what do you mean, like surprised me?
Yeah, just like potential candidates that you think is a good candidate, but he or she kind of did something and kind of landed them the job, or you passed the resume up to another level, to the partner level or whatever, something they do differently from the other people. Any memorable things?
Communication skills is key, right? Your ability to convey your ideas properly.
Yep.
And articulate the highlights in a succinct manner is kind of important. How to say, you have one shot to make an impression, right? You have you have a few shots to make an impression, but you have to make an impression, right? And it's again, this always goes back to being prepared. If you're not prepared, it shows, right? don't know how to answer things, you don't have a prepared statement, right? And you don't have confidence in your words, right? You can kind of tell when someone's not prepared when they're not confident in what they're saying, right? They're too high level, and they kind of glaze over things, and they're not very
scratch on the surface.
Yeah, they scratch the surface very, very lightly.
Right.
And again, and I've talked to people who, again, they've done that. They've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were confident in what they were saying and were able to communicate it properly,
yeah,
you kind of forgive that, right?
Yeah.
Because, what's that phrase? The medium is the message, right? How you convey the idea is part of that message.
Yeah.
Right. So right. How well I am conveying that I'm a suitable candidate is almost as important as the actual things, the words that I'm saying.
Right. Absolutely.
That saying that I'm a suitable candidate.
Yeah.
So doing that preparation is really important for people.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And I guess this ties back to what you do on a daily basis, right? Because you guys are audits. I'm assuming like client-facing audit, right?
Yeah.
You see the client, you see people, you got to communicate with them, right? And you're providing a service. You can't just like not talk and provide a service, right? You gotta tell them what you did. You gotta tell them what you saw. You gotta make recommendations and all that. All right. So at 8 years, can I ask what your title is now?
So I'm a lead.
Right.
So it's like a technical manager, right? So
can we talk about the progression of just generally?
Yeah, it goes from consultant to senior consultant to manager / lead, right? Lead is more of a technical manager than it is a people manager.
Okay.
Like I do manage people, but it's like my focus is more on actually delivering work than managing people to deliver work.
Okay. Yep.
Right. So there's a slight difference there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and then from there it goes on to like senior manager, and I think they have a senior lead position as well. Then from there it can splinter off into like you can go to, after senior manager you can be either a director, I think an income partner and an equity partner.
Okay. All right. So I guess we're pretty close to the end of the interview, but I wanted to touch on a few points, and the first one is, when you got hired, obviously 8 years ago, counting inflations and all that stuff, what did you start with?
Oh,
is there a range?
That's a really interesting question. Do you know what? This kind of points out to something I was actually talking to a friend about yesterday. In some circles, that question would be super rude. No, I'm serious. So in some circles, that question would be super rude, right? Asking how much someone makes.
Yeah.
I would, but for some reason, like, and I think it was, like, I think it was a relative of mine, ask someone else that question, and most of us were like, "Oh, that's kind of rude." But that relative was completely fine.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm not relative.
I know. But I'm just saying. I think it's a cultural thing. I think culturally, like I think people from Asia are okay with asking that question.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. But yeah, just kind of going back. I just thought that was interesting. So I would make around in between. I guess the range would be kind of somewhere between like mid 40s to mid 50s is kind of like your start off range. I think that's fair. Yeah.
That's good. Is there anything you wanted to add, considering what our audience, the people who may be listening and may be interested in not only your job, maybe the practice in general or the firm in general? Is there anything you want to add?
I guess I would need to add. Like, I'm very curious on because you cater to a pretty specific audience.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm very interested in what they're actually interested in, as in like in terms of what they're actually interested in learning, right? Because like for me, right, I would be, and as a listener of podcasts, I'd be interested in the journey, right? So things like salary, and stuff like that, that's kind of unimportant to me, right? Because I'm just because it will never apply to me. Like just because that person gets 45 to 50, it doesn't matter to me, right? I'm just kind of curious on whether or not like what they're trying to glean from this, like what kind of insights they're trying to glean from. Is it to help them get better prepared? Is it to help them understand how to apply? Is it to help them understand like where they're gonna be in a couple of years? So I'm very interested because it's like there are a lot of I think that it's fair to say there's a lot of students who come from foreign countries here to do schooling, go to school here and like get a job here and things like that.
Wanted to stay.
Yeah, want to stay. And I'm always curious on like how they end up making that decision, because like most of them, like for example, you come from Taiwan, right? Yeah. Taiwan's not like a bad country. Is it one of those scenarios like, you know how earlier I said like, oh, everyone else is leaving, should I be leaving too? Is it one of those scenarios where they're just like, well, everyone else is doing it, maybe I should be doing that as well, and not really assessing like what I'm trying to, like what your personal goals are, and what your personal desires are, right? Because because there's a few things that I like, you know, the CFA exams. Lots of Asian kids write the CFA. They all say like, oh yeah,
no, I respect that. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, why though? Right? Like, cause like
that's a very interesting question.
Like, what is that? What are you gonna? What is that supposed to achieve for you? Like, are you gonna become like front office? You're gonna work in mid office? Yeah. You're just gonna end up being I don't know, like an accountant then? Like, where's that? Where is that? Where is where's this leading, and
what's your strategy, right? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah,
right?
why do you do what you do?
I think when people graduate or approaching graduation, there's always that period where you're kind of lost. Yeah, right? You don't know what to do, and then you kind of, you know, oh, people say I gotta get CPA, people say I gotta get CFA in order to land an investment banking job, finance job, whatever, and they're just like, oh, I gotta go do it, right? But without knowing like why. Yeah, did I do it, and why am I like?
Right, because like if we compare like that, and then like nowadays in North America at least, the goal isn't even to get one of those; it's to like start up your own company and become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's
like,
what's hot now.
It's like so changed, right? Like, and it's just it's so interesting how like, what the motives are of people who kind of do these things, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No. I thank you for asking that question, because that is also one question I wanted to ask our audience. I mean, we've been kind of doing this podcast for like a few months now, and I wanted to kind of understand what our audience wants. Right? Is there anything that, you know, we can do better? Obviously, in a content level, in a technical level, you know, is there anything we can do better? And then also, what do you want to hear? And then what can I provide in order for you to figure out why you want to stay here? Why do you want to stay in your job? Why do you want to change a job? Why do you want to do something that, you know, one of our guests kind of share with everyone, and, you know, just kind of figure out like why you do all the things that you do. Yeah,
because when you get out of university, like you're transitioning from a very structured lifestyle to a very unstructured lifestyle, right? Because there's not like, once you're done school, that's it. You're out in the real world now.
It's free for all now.
Yeah. And like, there's all their decisions now have, you know, not serious ramifications, but they have implications on everything that you do, right? Yeah. So it's such an important decision that sometimes students come out of it not being equipped to answer that important decision. No, it's true though. Like when I went through school, it was the same thing. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that, okay, if I get a CPA, it'll be pretty stable, you know. But it's safe. But is that what I wanted to do, and all that stuff like that? You know, when you're first out of university, it's such a complicated question, right? Yeah. It's the first time you're kind of put with that complicated question.
Well, okay. Anyway, so I'll end the podcast right there. I just want to thank David for, you know, allotting like a little bit more than an hour of time of his day during the weekend. So thank you for that, David.
Yeah.